It was well past midnight when a young woman named Anna pulled into a deserted gas station. The biting cold wine sent shivers down her spine. Regretting not wearing a coat, she stepped out of her car and handed her credit card to the men behind the counter. "Fill it up, and please, a lollipop," she said with a smile. The man nodded and began pumping her gas, while Anna unwrapped the lollipop, trying to find some warmth in the freezing night. There were hardly any cars on the road at this late hour, and she was used to solitude, but tonight, something felt off. Everything around her seemed strange and unsettling. When the man returned her credit card, he looked into her eyes and said, "Anna, is it really you?" Anna was taken aback. That voice, those eyes. She gasped and looked at the man in front of her. He looked exactly like her long-lost brother Michael, who had disappeared without a trace 10 years ago. "Michael, is that you?" she whispered, unable to believe her eyes. He nodded and smiled, but his smile seemed artificial, devoid of human warmth. "Yes, Anna, it is me. Have you come back?" he said. Anna was overwhelmed with joy and happiness, but something about this situation made her feel uneasy. Michael had always been her favorite brother, and his disappearance had left a gaping wound in her heart. "Where have you been all this time? Why didn't you call?" she asked, a hint of bitterness in her voice. Michael shrugged and replied, "It is a long story, Anna. I'll have to explain a lot." They got into Anna's car, and Michael began telling his story. He told her that he had been abducted by otherworldly forces and had spent all these years in captivity. His suffering had been unimaginable, and he struggled to hold back tears as he recounted it. Anna listened in horror, trying to imagine what she would have gone through in his place. "And now, finally, I am free," Michael said, "but something has changed in me, Anna. I am not the same." Anna scrutinized her brother and noticed that his eyes had become even stranger. They were cold and inhuman, like the eyes of a stranger. A sense of fear washed over her. "What has happened to you, Michael? You look different," she whispered anxiously. Michael smiled again, but this time, his smile was menacing. "Don't you worry, little sister. I am still your brother," he said. On the way, Michael began telling her about the horrors he had experienced in captivity. He spoke of beings that were far from human and the sacrifices they demanded. Anna listened in terror and disbelief, but she couldn't help noticing that his stories were becoming more and more bizarre and unreal. Upon arriving at their home, Anna noticed that it had also changed. The house was in disrepair, windows shattered, and everything around them seemed shrouded in darkness and emptiness. "What happened to our home, Michael?" she asked, growing increasingly uneasy. Michael shrugged again, and his smile was once again unnerving. "This is the home of the creatures that abducted me, Anna. They stayed here, and now I am their master," he said. Anna stepped back, realizing that something had gone terribly wrong. She had a feeling that Michael was no longer human but something else hiding beneath his guise. Fear gripped her, and she knew she had to run. She tried to leave the house, but the door slammed shut in front of her. She turned around and saw Michael approaching her, his eyes now gleaming with malice and a thirst for blood. "You cannot escape, Anna. You are here to become a part of our family," he said, coming closer. Anna understood that she had to fight for her life. She took out a lighter and a bottle of alcohol from her bag, lit it, and threw it in Michael's direction. Flames engulfed him, and he screamed in pain, stepping back. Anna rushed to the door and ran out of the house. She knew she had to keep running and never look back. She didn't know what had happened to her brother, but she understood that he was no longer the person she once knew. The forgotten past remained in the past, but the fear she had experienced that night stayed with her forever, reminding her that some things are better left forgotten.